Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Rita Young, and I want to welcome you to this community conversation on the DSP workforce shortage in Georgia. And first of all, if you are out watching, just know that we are streaming on in 3 different places. So, by the way, thank you In Community for sponsoring this conversation. So, we are on the In Community Facebook page. We are on the Real Talk with Rita Facebook page, and we are also streaming on YouTube as well. And just to let folks know, if you're not able to join us today, or you want to listen again or send it out to your friends, the conversation will be archived in all 3
If
places.
you're not
So
able
just know
to
that.
join us today, or you want to listen again.
And I'm hearing a little bit, oh, thank you, Carol. So I want to introduce our panelists. And again, if you are watching live, I have a few folks watching. Let us know where you are watching from. We welcome this conversation today and welcome you today. And I think Robert, I'm going to, there you go. That's better. Okay. So I may put a couple folks on mute, but I want to, again, thank our panelists for joining us. We have, and I'm going to go on the order of the page here, Dr. Carol Britton-Laws from IHDD. And Carol is, hi, Deb. Deb is watching from Cumming. Thanks for joining us, Deb. It's good to see you. So we have Dr. Laws from IHDD, and she'll tell us a little bit about herself and some of her activities in just a moment. And Diane Willish, who is the CEO and Executive Director of United Cerebral Palsy of Georgia, as well as Robert Chandler, who is also the Executive Director of Star Choices. So welcome, everyone. I'm going to say hello, Jackie, watching from Gwinnett County. Again, we're getting warmed up a little bit. It's just 10:02. I also want to thank Katie Chandler for connecting me with Dr. Laws. She knew that I was going to have this conversation and said, hey, you might want to invite Dr. Laws. So thank you, Katie, for doing that. And also, as people are signing in, let us know. We want to know, can you hear us? Can you see us? And also where you are watching from. All right. Hi, Pam. I know where you're watching from. And again, this conversation will be archived for later. So here we go. All right. So a parent just last week sent me this. And by the way, I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you, Diane. We're looking good from Dunwoody. Thanks. I want to acknowledge that on today's panel, we don't have, and we just lost Robert, so hopefully he will come back on. We don't have a direct support professional. So I just want to acknowledge that. We're going to be talking about the direct support professional shortage here. And so it might be something that I do in the future, have another panel. So hopefully this will be the first of several conversations on this critical issue. So looks like folks are watching from Atlanta, from Decatur, from Jackson, Georgia as well. And feel free at any time as we go through the conversation to ask your own question. So feel free to participate. This is a community conversation. It is for all of us. Okay. All right. So parents, again, as we're kind of warming up, hey, Katrina from McDonough. A parent sent me this last week. She said the shortage of DSPs is actually even more concerning to me right now than anything else in the IDD world. Without DSPs, it doesn't matter if one has a waiver, a wonderful home to live in, or even a job. Without support, most folks will end up back in institutional care. And organizations that rely on hiring DSPs to support their clientele are at risk of folding. We are in a terrible pickle, and it's difficult to see a way out of this anytime soon. So just want to acknowledge that came from a parent last week. And on today's conversation, I'm going to be doing my best to represent families. I'm a family member, and I also self-direct services. I have 2 sons that I've been self-directing services for them since the self-direction program was offered. All right, so that's a little bit about that. I also want to acknowledge that I'm going to be sending you some links after the conversation to some relevant articles, and also giving you an opportunity to take some action or inviting you to take some action as well. But I want to, several people, once they found out I was having this conversation, sent me an article called Community Supports in Crisis, No Staff, No Service. So I'm going to be sending you that link out after our chat today. I encourage you and invite you to read that article. Has a lot of great information. So take a look at it if you can. All right, we're going to start off with a conversation now. Enough from me. So I want to introduce our again our panelists. So Carol, if you'll tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Great. Thank you, Rita, for having me today. And hello, everyone. I'm Carol Britton-Laws. I am an Associate Clinical Professor of Disability Studies at the Institute on Human Development and Disability. We are at the University of Georgia. And in my role there, I have many hats, as many of us do. One is that I instruct and coordinate a disability studies certificate program for matriculated UGA students. I also am the executive director of an inclusive post-secondary education program, which allows youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities who are college age to come to UGA and be fully included in UGA's campus to take classes and work toward their employment goals. But relevant to this conversation, I am also the principal investigator of the Living Well Georgia project, where, and I'm very happy to have Robert Chandler, who's one of our provider partners in that effort, and Diane, who is a statewide partner on some work that we are doing within the state, thinking about how to address this issue. So I'm very happy to be in your company today. And what most of my focus has been for the past 15, maybe closer to 20 years now, is related to how to professionalize and support the direct support workforce, both here in Georgia and nationally. I started as a direct support professional, although of course I didn't know that was what I was doing at the time. We didn't have that title then. And I did that for about 8 years in various settings. Realized, some of the challenges that go into doing that work, and also realized that if you just keep showing up, sometimes you get promoted without necessarily having the skills that you need to be a good manager, right? So I have quite an extensive background in thinking about the DSP workforce. I was a part of the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals in many ways for about 8 years. And my dissertation research was on the direct support workforce. And I've been fortunate to continue to have close relationships with a lot of the thought leaders in the country around this topic. So I'm happy to be here to share anything that I can bring to the table in terms of a national perspective, because this is certainly not just a Georgia issue.
Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you. And Diane, tell us a little bit about you and your organization. Let me take you off mute. There we go. You're muted, Diane.
Yep, sorry.
There you go.
Thank you, everyone. Really delighted to see so many parents from all over, certainly around Metro and other areas. So it's wonderful that we're including them in this conversation, because I think it's going to take a bigger village for us to impact change for direct support people. So I am Diane Willish. I'm the CEO of United Cerebral Palsy of Georgia, and also the CEO of United Cerebral Palsy of South Carolina. I'm a social worker by background and training. I have been in this field, I'm scary to say, since 1977, back in the institutional days. One of my student internships was in a state institution in South Florida, doing some direct care work and some case management, but really part of the training was doing the direct care work. So have a long history and commitment to the population and trying to make positive impacts. Our organization, despite our name, supports people with all types of intellectual and developmental disabilities, and we support people all over the state with an array of waiver services. Also, one of the other hats I wear, I feel like Carol, we have so many hats that we put on. I'm also the administrator and one of the founding members of SPAD, which is the Service Providers Association for Developmental Disabilities. And the purpose of that organization really is to impact public policy in a positive way that helps us move services forward and the whole field forward, certainly in Georgia. So I look forward to the conversation, happy to engage, and hopefully this is the beginning of many conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you. And Robert, tell us about yourself and your organization.
Thanks so much. My name is Robert Chandler. I am the CEO for Star Choices. We are a provider agency in 4 or 5 counties, some north of Atlanta, and then we've got some work in middle Georgia. We're very excited with the work that we do. We love working with folks with disabilities. We also work with folks with mental illness, and I'm just excited to be on the call. I think this is going to take all of us. I'm excited to work with anybody and everybody that wants to have conversations about how we help train and pay quality workforce. I think we are all united in that. Carol and Diane and I'm sure, have disagreed about things in the past. And there will be times, I hope, in the future for us to disagree again. But right now, we all need to focus on this crisis and, staying current and staying, everybody's in the red. So I won't say staying in the black, but, just staying around so that we can continue to support people who need the support that we provide.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Robert. You said it's going to take all of us. I would 100% agree with that statement. So again, I want to just reach out, look to our chat box and say hello to folks from Atlanta, Beata, Julie from Savannah, Bob, hello from Box Springs, Pamela from Atlanta, it looks like. Thank you so much for joining. All right, so let's just dig into this conversation. So this is probably geared towards Diane and Robert, but can you talk a little bit about how the shortage of direct support professionals has affected your organization? Who would like to take that first?
You want me to go ahead, Diane?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay. There have been many effects. Do we want to start with the well, I guess there's not a lot of positives. So it has affected us in our ability to hire. It has affected us in our ability to match. Part of what helps us so much in our field is matching staff to person supported. And I think our ability to do that has been severely limited. We have also been forced to continue to support people without the best match. I think that's something that I think about on a regular basis. Not people in jeopardy and not people that are, in significant risk, but folks that don't have the best. I mean, that's part of what we're searching for. Even when you got somebody that you like to work with, if we could find somebody that's even better, that you just hit it off with, that can support and meet your needs even better, that's what we want to do. And we're not able to do that right now.
You bring up a great point. It's the matching. So there's a little bit of art and magic that goes along with that, right? And I will certainly say, from my perspective as a person that self-directs services, sometimes the match goes extremely well, sometimes it doesn't. And so not having the ability to make that match or to choose from several individuals, it certainly sounds very difficult, Robert.
Oh, it is, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I think other challenges that we've seen is, I would say, stagnation. So before, I may have, and I currently have, a couple of availabilities in a particular group home. And so I'm looking to match with the 3 ladies or the 3 gentlemen that are living in there. I'm not able to do that right now because we've got folks that we've known needed to, we're not supporting them well. And the whole team has agreed this person needs to go somewhere else to get support, either in a host home or with their family or somewhere else. This is not the best place for them. But we've said that, that was a year ago for one lady and things like that. So what that's doing is that's hurting me from being able to help Diane out because I can't make a match until we get things ready again. So capacity has really been struggling.
Diane,
And I
what
don't know,
about
you want to
you?
go ahead and jump in?
Yeah.
What do you got, Diane?
Yeah, I would completely agree with everything that you've mentioned. It's had a significant negative impact on our ability to provide the quality of supports on an array of levels, whether it's medical supports, behavioral supports for individuals that have maybe amped up needs a little bit in those areas, and then those people who are less complex, but certainly need care and support and a good match to a direct support professional. All of those pieces of what we do, eyes wide open in a systematic kind of way. What we did historically, post pandemic, is a whole new ballgame. We are literally, I am somewhat ashamed to say, just pretty much taking applicants because we have to have people working. We've had, we're in a catch-22 where we've turned over people because we've overworked them and they're just so burnt out, but we've had no alternative but to overwork them. So we've lost some people that we're really sad about. We have diminished capacity for families who have needs because we're not accepting new referrals in the fashion that we would have had we felt more confident about the staffing situation. And then I would say, which is really most troubling to me, is I can give you an example of a woman that we supported in Gwinnett County who, aging, as our folks do, had some medical complications which required her to now use oxygen and have a G-tube. Might have been a temporary situation, but we asked the family to consider short-term rehab until she stabilized, because we didn't feel confident with the churn of staff, with the turnover, that we could assure the level of support that she needed through her recovery. Of course, welcome her back home if she's able to, and we're able to. But that's the kind of thing when even our existing population, aside from accepting new people, but from the existing group of people, many of whom we've supported for 20 and 30 years. In this case of this woman, she'd been with us for 25 years. That's a heartbreak for that person, for her family, and for the organization. Our people get super connected to those we support. And when we have to say we can't safely do this, but I will say the other side of this coin is face a significant amount of pressure from the system to please do take her back. And we just kind of had to draw a line in the sand. So it impacts every aspect of our work, and we're just not able to provide supports in the way we would be, that we're most proud of. I'm sorry to say that, but it's true.
And I'm sorry to hear that, Diane. And so, Carol, I want to get you in as well. And you were talking as we were doing the audio and video check earlier about a conference that you recently attended. So tell us, is this only a Georgia issue, or is it a national issue as well?
Yeah, this is very much a national issue, and it's very much top of mind for a lot of the researchers and policy wonks in our country. I was at the Reinventing Quality Conference. It's a biannual conference where it's specifically for intellectual and developmental disability sector, and it's an invitation-only event for presenters. So we have a lot of those folks who are really involved in thinking about this on a national level. And it's pervasive. A lot of the sessions that I attended spoke about the crushingly high vacancy rates that provider organizations like Diane's and Robert's are currently facing. The pandemic certainly has put a spotlight on the issues that the direct support workforce faced, but they have been in place for decades and have really been a subject of a lot of intervention and a lot of advocacy work, particularly by the Institute on Community Integration at the University of Minnesota for decades. And, we talk about kind of why we find ourselves in this situation currently. And Dr. Amy Hewitt, who has long been a thought leader in this area, shared something that really resonated with me. And she said, well, we find ourselves here because this is where we started. In order to justify community waiver supports, part of that rationale was that it was cheaper than to have people live in institutions. And therefore, DSP wages were lower than staff who are serving in institutional or more congregate settings. And it never really adjusted. And because, provider organizations like Star Choices and UCP do not get to set their rates, right? They receive them. They're set by the state, and there's variation in what states can do. They're really very, very limited in terms of how much more you can provide in terms of a wage or a bonus for staff. So this is an issue throughout the country. I think every state is facing the same challenges in getting people interested in the work, having them have a real clear idea about the commitment, and also, having people come into the job and then stay for more than 6 months, which is typically when most turnover happens in provider organizations.
So let's talk about the rates. And I do have some questions and folks are commenting. So let's say Beata says, thanks for your honesty, Diane and Robert. This is heartbreaking. And then let's see, has it been harder to find DSPs doing self-direct? I would say yes, yes, and yes. For multiple reasons. It is, I don't know if it's just as difficult, but it has been to find the right match, especially for my younger son. And so, yes, it has been extremely difficult. And to the point of where I don't think it's ever been this challenging. And I've been self-directing since its inception. And then Carol asks, do you think the total of 7% raise through Appendix K will help bring in staff? So let's move to talking about setting rates. And then does anybody want to take Carol's question? Do you think that, yeah, Diane.
I can jump in and others please also. Hey, Carol, good to see you're here. Carol does a lot of great work in Metro supporting DSPs in with her family group. But anyway, the dilemma is that we started so far behind. I appreciated Carol quoting Amy Hewitt about we're here because that's where we started. Well, we have started so far behind back to the original rate study, which really was the first and only looked at a sector of CLS services and residential supports and some respite services. We started back then in 2015 at $10.64. That was the basis of a DSP wage that the rest of the rate was built on. And the challenge there is we expressed deep concern at the time because we were all experiencing turnover. And I think the National Core Indicator Staff Stability Survey has demonstrated at least at best a 30% turnover rate in Georgia since we've been participating in those surveys. And now we're up to 43, 45%. So Carol, to your question, really, we are so far behind that if you put and we're not obligated to pay the $10.62, but that just tells you how the rate was built. So that's within a margin of a quarter. That's how much money is available to pay people within the rate. It's 7% on top of $10.62 is close to $11 or something. I've done all the calculations. It doesn't remotely get us close to even something that is a viable wage. And I will honestly say, and I'm interested, Robert and Carol, what you all think about this. I'm not sure I even know what the right wage is anymore. We've used a lot of our federal dollars to do temporary wage increases to help attract, we thought, people doing sign-on bonuses, finder's fees for staff who refer potential employees. And we're up in some areas of the state to $16 an hour, and we have literally 0 applicants. So I'm not sure I know what the number is, but I know it's not $11 or $12. I know that. So.
No, I'm right there with you, Diane. It's not $11 or $12. We've I talked to several other provider agencies and look at other people's job ads and just like, well, what are they doing? How's it working? And it's the answer is not $1 more. It's not $2 more. That's not where we are. Um, I I I don't know what the answers are. We've had a $1,500 sign-on bonus for the last year, and we've hired worse this last year than we have in the previous 12 that I've been with the company. So I'm not sure where we are. I feel like the earth has moved and we fell a lot behind in a very short period of time.
And I would say too, and then I'll Rita, you can move on to other parts of the conversation. But I would say, while on the surface people think, well, you're always talking about money, and that it shouldn't always be about the money, but it's going to be about the money until we can get close to right. And then this really is a multi-pronged approach for retention and to a degree to recruitment. But I feel like if we can at least advertise a modestly close to livable wage where people don't need food stamps and supported and Section 8 housing and other government benefits, if we can get to that point, then we can talk about all the other things that we know are important to that workforce, or at least we believe are important to them, like career letters. And Carol knows a lot about all of those things. But we've got to talk, we've got to get past the money conversation, and we're not there yet.
Yeah, thank you, Diane. I was going to just add, and right as you were starting to say it, whatever that wage is, it needs to be high enough to compensate if someone were to lose their public benefits that they qualify for, because over half of this workforce is at least partially supported by public benefits like temporary assistance for needy families or SNAP food benefits. And so if the wage is maybe $15 an hour, might not be high enough, depending on the area that DSP lives. So when you hear people nationally talk about a living wage broadly for this workforce, they're talking more about a $20 an hour, maybe even up from that in certain areas, wage per hour.
So in continuing the conversation on rates, who sets the rates in Georgia? And then we're also in the process of going through a rate study. DBHDD has commissioned a rate study. And so what do you think about that? Why is that important to us? So talk about who sets those rates.
I can kick it off if you'd like. The department, DBHDD, Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, in conjunction with DCH, Department of Community Health, the funding is Medicaid dollars that from the feds or state dollars, and then a match from the federal government. And DCH owns the waivers and the rates. That is their purview, but DBHDD is the administrative authority over the rates and really kind of takes the lead in those conversations. So at the present time, with the rate study going on, there's multiple pieces of information and data that are used to compile a rate. A part of it relates to how many hours a DSP needs to be in training, how many hours do they have non-contact time, how much time, training wages, overhead, program support personnel. I mean, it's a very complicated but thorough process. Just yesterday, the cost survey that the group that is doing the rate study is Burns and Associates, who did the study several years ago. They are doing it now. They just released the provider cost survey yesterday that providers are urged to complete to demonstrate all of the costs associated with provision of services. The catch-22 of that is, of course, we're only spending what we've got. It doesn't show what we would need to spend to get to the point in quality and consistency of personnel. So it's kind of a retrospective. It's like what's happening now, but what happening now is not good, right? So it is a catch-22, but we're really working hard to encourage people to participate in that. And then Burns will look at a lot of different pieces of national data. One of the most important pieces is through the Bureau of Labor Statistics. There is something called a standard occupational class, an SOC, and every job in the country, almost every job, has an SOC, a standard occupational class, and it's kind of a definition of the tasks involved in a particular job, and then the wage range from the mean to the median to the low to the high from around the country. The challenge in doing rates, and the rates folks, Burns folks, talk about this, is that there's no direct support professional standard occupational class. So their work is not defined and it's not recognized in the federal system of looking at at occupations. So, we can check it to the side and talk about it more later, is our advocacy around that issue in and of itself, of getting that established. So in the interim, what they will do is they will look at a variety of related positions: home health aides, nursing aides, psych aides, and kind of massage those numbers to come up with an hourly rate. The big factor in that is which of those classifications are used and what percentile of the wage they use. Are we going to go just to the 50th percentile, or do we need to account for inflation and knowing that rates aren't going to change in many years to come again? So do we need to go to the 70th or 75th percentile of whatever that number is, so that we've got a little hedge in there and a livable number? So I hope I haven't talked in circles. I hope that was quasi-clear, because it is a bit complicated, but I hope that
it
helped.
is a bit complicated. I would agree. And the study, again, I'm going to send folks the link. Community Supports in Crisis, No Staff, No Service does a fine job in explaining how they come to rates, and the fact that there is no classification federally for this type of work, which is problematic. And so a couple of things. Someone is saying, in terms of cost cutting, et cetera, are there other things that can be done? I think that what we're saying is that the state of Georgia sets the rate, right? So providers can't set the rate; it's the state that actually sets the rate. So just wanted to clarify that. I hope I answered your question. Someone made a comment on Facebook. I can't see who that is, unfortunately, but I hope that I was able to at least give you that piece of information. Folks are saying we can't compete with Target at $15 an hour with benefits. Very much agreed. And then let's see. Someone is saying that they do self-direction. You've been paying $10 an hour since 2015, and that it looks like it's challenging for you as well. Lenidra, hi Lenidra, thank you so much for commenting. And I hope that if you have any other questions, let us know. It's, again, the state sets the rate, so it's not the providers themselves that set the rate. Okay, so let's go. Anything? Yes, Robert, jump in.
Yes. I think Diane said something that was very key, and I want to make sure in this current crisis that we don't overlook it. What we need is, right now, the rates are adjusted and looked at every 3 to 5 years, which is absurd. So what we need while we're fighting this time to get a livable wage for people is to make sure that we recognize what we know will happen. There will be inflation every year after this one. There has been for a long time. Now, recently, the inflation has been incredible. So hopefully it won't be this high, but we know it will occur. So we should build those into the rates so that people will make more 4 years from now than what they make today. Because 4 years from now, even if they make more, their spending power will not be anymore, because inflation will have taken some of that. So just for us to not fall further behind, we need automatic increases in those rates each year moving forward. And I think every other business recognizes that, but because we're not able to set rates, we don't have the authority to do that. we would love to pass on, and I think a lot of folks would agree to passing on a small increase so that people could stay up with the cost of living. But we're not able to do that with the way our system is set up.
Thank you, Robert. Carol, anything else before we move on? Any to the next question?
No, I think that, Robert and Diane spoke to this very well. The only thing I would add is just that in setting rates, there is flexibility within a state. So nationally, the Center for Medicaid Services does mandate certain things need to be covered and included in the waivers that are offered and the subsequent rates. But states have quite a bit of flexibility in what they can choose to add. So you will see a lot of variation across states. And so sometimes when people think about where they want to live, where might be the best place for them to live, keeping that in mind is also very important.
So let's just get to the key issue because first of all, I want to thank everyone for participating in the chat. It's really very helpful, and I invite you to do that. What's the core issue in your opinion here? Is it rates? Is it recruitment? Is it education, the certification? Is it recognition that this is an important work? What's the key issue, or is it all of the above? Carol, you want to go first?
Sure. I would say, it is all of the above. I think philosophically, we are trying to make the value-based case for supporting people who have historically been segregated and devalued in our communities and in our society for a very long time, and making the case for the need and the desire for folks to be supported in their home communities, and that they bring value to the community and they are worth the public investment, and that we want for staff to be seen as, at least I want staff, DSPs, to be seen as part of a social justice movement in helping people to have the lives that they choose, that are fully included in their communities, and for them to be given the opportunity to fully participate in all of the ways that they would like to. It's often not approached from that social justice perspective. We still tend to, as Diane mentioned, direct support professionals are often lumped in with more medicalized approaches to mitigating and rehabilitating disability. So home health aides, certified nursing assistants, to a large extent personal care aides, which are all this labor-related group that DSPs tend to be related to when we're looking at rates, really come to this work looking at it as perhaps a time-limited engagement with a person. CNA works with someone for a limited period of time, typically when they're in a rehabilitative setting, with expectations for that to improve, and then they will be discharged at some point, right? We are talking about lifelong support for folks in community settings. And a lot of, people don't really understand the difference in those roles. I think we need to do a much better job at communicating how this work has evolved historically, and really making people who are interested in the work aware of the demands of the job. It's a high touch, very personal type of work. We don't have enough people using realistic job previews in their recruiting process. And so this is one of the only industries that I can think of where you have to hire someone first in order for them to have an idea about what they're going to be doing. And then they decide, they have the right, of course, to decide that maybe this isn't for them, but you've already invested all of this, time and money in bringing them on and helping them meet the requirements for the state to be able to serve people. And it's a huge expense to churn people in and out in that way. So that's just one part of what I think we need, but I'm going to stop talking because I know Diane and Robert have equally, if not better, things to add to this.
Diane.
I support and agree with everything that Carol mentioned. And, one of the things we say at UCP amongst ourselves is that, You know, it seems like nobody cares about what we do, but the individuals we support, their families, and us, or our colleagues, you know, our sister agencies, so to speak. We have to recognize that we're talking about in Georgia a population of about 13,000 people that are on the getting waiver services. So it's not a big constituency that anyone is really concerned about. And we need to, that's why we talked about, you know, we're really going to need to coalesce together as a bigger community of people so that we can carry some of that political clout, because it is politics, it is about money. And so we need to operate in the same kinds of ways that the nursing home industry does, who does, by the way, Robert, get an annual increase because they cost report out their costs and their rates automatically go up. And having been on the front end back in the 70s of the movement to community, and in retrospect, I kind of remember being at parent meetings, being the cheerleader for movement into the community for people's loved ones. And I can reflect back on that time now and think, boy, did we sell people a bill of goods? Because what we told people was that life was going to be so much better, that it was the right thing to do, that people would flourish, when really what it was all about was cost savings. And those dollars that supported those monolithic institutions did not transfer into the community. And most recently here in Georgia, those dollars, when we closed the institution up in Rome or down in South Georgia or downsized, I mean, we've got 100 and some 50 maybe individuals waiting to be the last people out of the Olmsted settlement. Those dollars didn't go. The level of support that were invested in individuals when they were in institutional care didn't translate to the community. So I think I don't mean to go off track a little bit, but I think, again, to what I said earlier, we have got to solve this money problem first. And then I think we can go down to all the other issues that we know, or we're pretty certain we know are important to the direct support professionals. It needs to be viewed. Think about all the skills that a DSP needs, right? They need to be a teacher. They need to be a personal care attendant. They need to be a great observer of behavior and health, to watch for signs and signals of other things going on. They need to be a chef and a therapist and a friend and a advocate. The list goes on and on. So it's a really unique role that is so super important to a population of people that on the surface the community says they care about, but our public policy has not demonstrated that position is really true. So.
Thank you, Diane. And someone is, well, several people are agreeing with you. There you go. Amen, Diane. There you go for that today. Robert, what about you?
Well, I thought about this. I think I do want to say there have been some things the last few years, and I don't know if we're going to get to that in a minute. We can just tell me to wait, and I'll be completely cool. But there are some things that have the last few years I'm very excited about. What we're doing right now, the way technology has evolved, particularly in folks that we support's lives, with the use of being able to be connected in the community, more involved electronically, if not in person, that has changed the game on a lot of things. Our ability to get involved in multiple things in multiple locations has just vastly changed. The fact that younger generations are spending more time online. Now, we can have the argument about whether that's healthy or not healthy, but they are. And so the fact that where most of the younger people are, we're able to offer a lot more of that online community to the folks that we're supporting that are aging out of this, that are aging into the system. So I'm very excited about that too. Locally, from our ability to interact over Zoom and Facebook with different branch offices and folks that are in different counties without having to spend a whole day traveling to meet with one another. So these are exciting pieces about services, as well as about provider agencies and our ability to manage. But I think one of my board members said something to me, and she said, and it's to Diane and all our point, if it's still peanuts, it doesn't matter how great of benefits you have or supports you have, or whether your mission speaks to people's heart and makes them feel proud to be a part of your team. If we're still talking about peanuts and we're not giving people a livable wage or even an over the poverty line wage, then it really doesn't matter. There is no hug that makes up for paying somebody poverty wages. I mean, there is nobody's embrace can take care of that.
That is
So
just that's a quote right there, Robert. Yeah, there is no hug. Yeah, yeah. Oh, no, completely agree. And someone was just joining us, and we're talking about the DSP workforce shortage in Georgia. This has been a fantastic conversation. Is there anything that the community at large can do to help? And it sounds like I'm reading just very briefly some of the comments. People are saying, well, what can we do about this? What kind of action can we take? Anyone want to take that?
I can kick it off. If you don't know, and Rita, maybe this is some information you have posted, or I can get to you to post or repost it. There was a Senate resolution that established a Senate study committee. And what study committees do is look at a particular issue over kind of the break months when legislature is not in session. There is a study committee about home and community-based services at large, somewhat with a focus of the waiting list, which is super important, but also recognizing that the underpinning of adding people to services is having personnel to be able to provide the services. So the committee is very acutely aware of the need to understand and look at and make recommendations with respect to the workforce. So the study committee wants to hear from families. They want to hear from providers. They will be moving around the state. The first meeting was just at the end of July, kind of a real organizational set the tone kind of meeting. And then they have 3 or 4 others scheduled. The next one will be in Atlanta. Then they're going to Rome, Tifton, and back in Atlanta in November. So I would strongly encourage family members who are impacted by this issue in any way. It could be that you got a waiver, but you can't get a provider to support your person because they saying we don't have staff. Self-directed families who are struggling to find personnel as well. And I think it's really super important. And I've seen a lot of progress amongst us over the past couple of years in this regard. We're all in this together, the families, the individuals, the providers, and advocates like Carol. This is something that is important to all of us, and let's focus on what we agree about, and advocate together on those issues. And I think at this time it is the rate study and the rates and the impact of not having the skilled workforce available. So I can share those meeting times, and I don't know that they have specific locations, but it's coming, and I would really encourage if you're able to take the time to do that. And I think then once we get into the session, we hope that there will be a completed rate study, and I think it will be done. It won't be done in time for the legislature to really grapple with it and put the dollars into it, because it's going to be a big number. There is no doubt. I would say 100 million at least is going to be what that number is going to reveal, because remember, they're looking across all services, not just residential or not just day. It's everything. So then we're going to need advocacy with the legislature to commit to funding what the study reveals. So we've got, the study committee that we need to inform and educate, and then we need to inform and educate and advocate with the legislators to make a commitment to finally make a financial investment in this population and recognize the workforce. And I'll just add one little tidbit and then I'll zip it. And that is that we know that the bulk of the DSP workforce is women of color, and we know that the majority of those women are often single parents. And we've thought about how we add that to the conversation, because, you know, I was thinking, Carol, when you talked about the social justice, it really is, it causes one to wonder, why is it so easy to tamp down and forget this workforce? And I'm sorry, I don't know how to make stop. One second. Sorry. How we make that, bring that point up in a respectful way, but recognize what the facts are, and those are the facts. So anyway, I'm sure these guys, my colleagues, have some other information to share as well.
So the Senate committee, someone posted actually the link from the recording, and I can certainly summarize those dates of those upcoming meetings and post them in various places for people to get involved. Anyone, Robert and Carol, on that particular, let me just ask this one thing. This popped into my head, and we have 513 waivers that have been approved as of July 1. Robert, I can see you. Will we have capacity to serve those individuals? What is your best guess? Can you make a comment on that, Robert?
I think it's great that you brought that up. I think it's a very important issue. I think, first of all, I don't think we are going to place 513 people. And it's great that they approve that many. But I know every other provider I call when I can't take somebody, they're not taking anybody either. And that's because we don't have the capacity. So yes, we don't have the capacity. But what not having capacity means is that we need more money so that we can pay people a living wage. What not having capacity doesn't mean is that you should find additional new providers to come in and be willing to do it and pay people sub minimum. I mean, that when what gets confused for people, and confused is the nicest way I can put it, is that they think because Diane says no to somebody and I say no to somebody, that they need to keep searching with the same deal to find somebody that will say yes. And that's not the case. Once 2 or 3 providers say no, the problem is we know that if we take this person, we're not going to be able to meet their financial needs without losing a bunch of money. And so rather than looking for someone that doesn't recognize that, and we're not talking about making a profit, we're just not in positions anymore where we can afford to lose a ton of money on any one individual. Our margin is way too small.
And I thank you so much for your honesty and candor on that. Carol, anything else that you want to say regarding the new waivers that are being released, the funding?
Just, you know, I would echo exactly what Robert and Diane have already mentioned in terms of capacity needs to be built within the existing structures. And for people who have committed to this work and have experience and have relationships with people already, to be stabilized and to be able to grow and take, you know, bring in more people to have them supported well. I did want to add one additional thing related to what you all can do related to advocacy. So again, Diane's points were very well made about the state level advocacy, talking to your local legislators, bringing your family stories. You know, I can provide, and I have been asked to provide data and statistics and that dry stuff to really kind of quantify the issue, but it's the stories of impact on people and their families that really make the most difference. So be willing to share your story. Since Diane has mentioned the need for a standard occupational classification for DSPs, the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals does have a national advocacy effort that they began for the first time this year and this spring. And there will be opportunities next spring as well for all of us to become more involved in that. They are using technology, as Robert mentioned, the good things that came out of the pandemic, right? We all learned how to better use these types of virtual platforms. But they are coordinating a national effort for direct support professionals, people receiving supports, family members, to coordinate using a platform called Soapbox to meet with your legislators in your state, in the area that you live. And typically you'll meet with staffers, but they are completely unaware of the need for the standard occupational code to increase rates for staff, or what a DSP does, or why they need to know about it. So there will be more information coming out related to this that, I hope that Rita will share, and I know we'll share broadly in our networks. So there'll be other opportunities for you to get involved in advocating for that important piece nationally too.
Robert.
Yes. One other thing I just wanted to mention to folks, we have, and I know most every other provider agency has a human rights committee. That committee is made up of community members that come in, and anytime we want to limit someone's rights for safety reasons, or anytime we want to take an action that limits their power in their own life, we want to give them due process, and we want to run it past folks on a committee who don't work for us, so that they're able to be open and honest. And we are always looking for human rights committee members. I know other provider agencies are also doing that. You can find numerous provider agencies in your local area and say, hey, do you have a human rights committee or another committee that I could volunteer on? It usually meets, I think we do every other month. So it's, for an hour, hour and a half. So it's not a total commitment that's going to take you tons of time, but it is a way for you to get involved in supporting this community. It's a way for you to help check providers to make sure that anytime we're limiting things for folks, there is no less restrictive way for us to do it. And that we need that check sometimes. We need somebody to say, hey, let's think through this. We definitely don't need them run out in the street, but is there a less restrictive way to do this than what you're proposing? And so I'm very excited, and I hope folks will look us up and give us a call if they're interested in being a Human Rights Committee member. And that's another way to get involved and really help folks with disabilities and mental illness.
Diane, you wanted to chime in. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because I don't want to take too much time, but I want to reiterate what Carol mentioned about sharing stories. It's often, while providers generally are super good advocates for the people that we support and the mission of our organizations, but hearing from family members, whether they're part of our organizations or whether they are self-directed families, those stories of how this issue impacts your loved ones are so super important. I was talking to a dad last week whose daughter has lived with us, 10, 15 years. And he was talking about the churn of employees, and most employees leave, we lose 50% of people in the first 6 months about. So constantly when this young woman comes home from her day, whatever she has done during the day, and there's a new person there, that is so disruptive because it's a new relationship to build. And unfortunately, a lot of times the onus is on the individual to try to feel this out, because we are so short-staffed that there's not other people around to help navigate and pave the way for that relationship building. And then 3 weeks later, there's yet again another new person. And depending upon the individual's capacities, touch and tone and all of those things when providing the most intimate of personal care is so super duper important. And again, when you're turning employees like we all unfortunately are doing, that is so disruptive and so hard for individuals to navigate through and upsetting to them. And this is something we think about all the time, and it tears our guts out because we can't necessarily fix it. But anyway, I'm just saying that, pleading for participating in these meetings and sharing stories of how this issue is impacting your loved one would be super helpful.
Thank you, Diane. And again, personalizing it. I think that's the key there. And I've heard the word disruptive several times in our conversation today. And so, talking about how disruptive it is to have, new staff working with our, our loved ones. That's one of the things that does make a difference for legislators. And so, I want to thank everyone because people have hung on with us for an hour here. And I want to thank our panelists and thank In Community. And also to let you know, we talked about how you can get involved. We have our In Community, and I have a very exciting announcement. We can't make it today, but we will make it very soon. And so if you're interested in being a part of an organized advocacy movement, go on over to In Community's Facebook page, go on to their In Community Advocates. And if you're interested in that type of advocacy content, you'll be the first to get the news. So we can't make it today. It is coming. And so just thank you all so much for being a part of this conversation. I found it very rich, engaging. Thanks to all our participants. I was not able to acknowledge every single comment because we've had so many, but thanks for talking to each other in the chat, for offering your words of wisdom. And you are so welcome, Jose. And we will continue this conversation. Again, I just want to reiterate, we didn't have direct support professionals on this panel. We may in the future, because of course their perspective is very critical. So thank you all so much. I'm going to close this conversation and look forward to talking again with everyone soon. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.